Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Pipelines transport goods through a pipe in a cost-effective manner. They are generally the most economical way to transport large quantities of oil, natural gas, and biofuels. Pipelines have a lower cost per unit and higher capacity than shipping these products by rail or truck. Oil pipelines are made from steel or plastic tubes with an inner diameter from 4 to 48 inches. The oil is kept moving forward by pump stations along the pipeline. The existence of the American pipeline network recently came into the news by two events: 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill, or as it's better known as the BP oil spill, and the 2012 Keystone Pipeline decision made by President Obama. Today we will be discussing why pipeline networks exist, what it does, and whether it is of value to you. Our guest today is Steve Roberts. He's here today to demystify pipelines and to answer questions about pipeline safety. Steve Roberts, welcome to Conversation.
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be here.
So let's start demystifying. First, describe, what is a pipeline? I just said it, but from your point of view, what is the pipeline network all about, and how extensive is it across the United States?
It's very extensive. We have approximately 2.4 to 2.5 million miles of pipeline that run throughout the United States.
That's a lot more than interstate highway miles, isn't it?
It certainly is. 65% of the energy that we use as Americans is transported through these pipeline systems. As you have already mentioned, safest way to transport these products through the pipeline. So because it's such a big network, there is a lot that goes into regulating and keeping up with the pipeline systems and those type of things. So we take part with what we do in our business as part of the regulatory side of that.
Give people some idea of how much oil goes through these pipelines every day.
You know, I don't have a number to give you.
Just some rough idea of, because people have this idea that I don't think that folks understand just the volume of oil and natural gas that is actually being used every single day. I think it's something like 1 million pounds of petroleum every single day gets used.
Yes, there are millions of gallons of liquid product that goes through these pipeline systems a day. Certainly that in cubic feet for the natural gas that we, in the larger transmission pipelines systems that are out there.
Quarter million cubic feet a day of natural gas goes through these pipelines?
It is a lot. It certainly is. There's a great need for it, and like I said, from where we stand and what we do from our side of the programs that we put on and representing these companies, there's just a lot to do on the regulatory side because of all the products that's pushed through these systems.
Now, to be sure, there is a huge volume of law in federal law, isn't there, that specifies just about everything that you would need to know and how to build and how the safety standards. This is all part of the federal code, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
There's like several chapters of the federal code, and it just goes on. I started reading this on and on and on. Right?
It really does.
So this is not like some Wild West environment, is it?
No, it's not. And as time has gone on, as things have evolved, those regulations have been looked at, refined. The responsibilities for the pipeline companies have also been changed a little bit too as time has gone along, and that's where we have kind of come into play and what we do for or representing the pipeline companies.
Now there's several kinds of or designations of pipeline. There's there's the transmission lines that go over long, hundreds and thousands of miles, right?
Yes, there is.
These are like big.
They are big.
Talk about them.
The large transmission pipelines typically have larger diameter, as you mentioned. to go with that, typically a little larger pressure with that. And as we've already mentioned, those larger gallons and cubic feet of product transport through these lines over the super long distance. The gathering lines typically that you hear about, they don't always have to be, but sometimes those are the ones that you see above ground that you'll find that go from a wellhead to some type of a storage facility or some type of another transportation pipeline. And then really the third type is the local distribution systems, the ones that provide the natural gas, typically the smaller lines, a little bit lower pressure that heat our homes and our businesses.
Mm-hmm. And these, in your work, have you found that, I mean, there are people out in the world who would like to ring the bell and say, oh my goodness, this pipeline system is very dangerous and we have to watch these people much closer. Do you find that it is a danger to the public in general, and that the safety of the public is not being well looked after?
From my perspective, no. In fact, one of the reasons that I have a job and do what I'm able to do in providing pipeline safety programs to stakeholder groups such as emergency officials and excavators and local public officials is because the pipeline companies take a great deal of care in the integrity management programs, where they are actually out inspecting their pipelines, many times replacing their pipelines, and just keeping an eye on the entire process for safety. Work very closely with a lot of local operators, some regional folks as well, and they're very busy folks, and they take their job very, very seriously. And it's actually been the last 4 years I've been doing this. It's been a pleasure working with them because they do take it very, very seriously. And the public, they are part of the public. They have families that live in these communities themselves. So it is a very important part of what they do.
Do you speak well of these companies because they're paying you to speak well of them?
No, it's what I've actually experienced. I'm an old retired cop, and I'll tell you how it is. There are certainly issues out there. There's been things that's happened, unfortunately, and with a piece of machinery, pipeline in the ground, things are going to happen, unfortunately. But this is my experience working hand in hand with these folks, putting these programs together and working with them to actually go out and deliver these. They do take a great deal of pride in what they do.
Prior to going on the air, you described to me that the number one reason for pipeline leakage is people outside of the pipeline crashing into it or digging into it, or somehow. Just describe again from your perspective what this problem is.
Yes, nationally, the leading cause of pipeline emergencies or pipeline incidents is third-party strikes. Excavators, contractors, homeowners, just not realizing the damage prevention and one-call message. We just came out of the 811 month. That's nationally out there for everyone to observe. And the
811 is
the national one-call number for anyone that is going to do any type of excavation project. Most states now require it, that you call 811 before you dig. Mm-hmm. And basically what that is it gives the opportunity for the one call. They serve as a liaison to all the pipeline companies, and they will notify them that there's a project that's going to go on in this specific location. It gives the pipeline operators time to go out and locate any pipelines that are in those specific areas before any digging. And then oftentimes, especially with the larger transmission pipelines that we've talked about, Lee, they actually will stay on site while the excavation around their pipeline facilities and systems occur. Mm-hmm. So third-party strikes, maybe not taking the time to call 811. Time is money. We live in tough times right now. Mm-hmm. But my goodness, the outcome of not calling and potentially striking a pipeline facility, it could be very, very dangerous. So really educating the public and educating everyone on the importance of safe digging and calling 811 is a huge, huge deal for the pipeline companies.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so third-party strike is the majority, but then there are failures of the pipe itself. There are corrosion issues, and describe that. that side.
Yeah, corrosion issues occur.
That's corrosion on the outside or on the inside, right?
Corrosion typically on the outside. Something damages, especially with these pipelines, the larger steel transmission pipelines that you mentioned earlier in your introduction. Typically they have a protective cathodic paper-thin coating on the outside of them. If anything comes in contact with that pipeline that damages that protective coating, the corrosion process can start. That's why it's very important, as I mentioned, the pipeline companies, there's things that they do every day, of every week, of every month of the year that we never know as part of their integrity management program to ensure that that corrosion is avoided completely, or certainly kept to a minimum, or get it identified so it can be dealt with as soon as possible. But even after all of those efforts, this is a piece of equipment that's in the ground, and unfortunately failures do occur from time to time.
Now, also, there are problems on the inside of pipes, right?
Yes.
And I didn't realize till I started reading about this that they have pigs running through there.
Yes, they do. They have an industry term. It's called a smart pig. It is an extremely, and there's different types of pigging. They have pigs that actually clean the inside of the pipeline system.
Describe to people so they know what you're talking about with a pig. There's not a little guy with feet running through there.
No, and a snout. No, not at all. This is a very, very expensive technical piece of equipment, and it basically has sensors on it. Fits obviously the diameter of that pipeline. There's a place in that system where they can insert that smart pig, and it will actually go in and down through the pipeline, and it's looking for any type of anomaly such as nicks, dings, or fissures. You know, anything that could show that there's a problem or an issue on the internal part of that pipeline system. Basically, after the smart pig makes its run and completes its run through the pipeline, it is then taken out, and engineers using computers can hook up to that device and identify those areas of concern, and then the operators will actually go out. They can expose that area of the pipeline, they can put a protective sleeve around it, they can replace it, they can then pressure test it and make sure it's in good working order before they bring it back online again.
Mm-hmm. Now these, when you have product, and that's what it's called, isn't it? When
Yes.
you have product traveling through these pipes, it's under tremendous pressure, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Especially the long transmission, these transmission pipelines. How is this pressure created, and why is it created?
Yes,
because that's pushing out on the metal.
It certainly is. And when there is an issue and the pipe is replaced, they have levels actually that they go above to where that the actual pressure in the line is going to be. They'll max that out to make sure that that pipeline is going to maintain its pressure in regular operating or normal operating systems. But certainly the pump stations, the compressor stations for both the liquid and the gas is what creates that pressure through the line. Line pressure in the line is not a constant. Depending on how far away or close to that pumping station or compressor station, whether it's going uphill or downhill, all can affect pressure in that line. The type of product itself and the pipeline company, how hard they're going to push that product through the line. So there's several different factors, but at the end of the day, and we say this and mention this a lot in our safety programs that we do, pressure pushes the product in the line. It is the factor that's in that pipeline that we want everyone to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Some people worry that when one of these pipes break, that it just keeps spilling out and out and out. Is that the case, or the moment that stuff starts spilling out, is there some sensor system that says stop and that things get shut down?
Yes.
Is there a way to shut things down?
Yes, there is. Typically, especially with your larger transmission companies that are out there, they have control centers. And from my background, I look at it like a 911 center, if you will. And they're able to monitor the product that's in those pipelines, flow, density, and pressure, those type of things. And if something goes off scale or real low, or there's a major change, then their training kicks in, and they're able to electronically many times shoot that satellite beam to a remote valve, and they'll shut it. That way, they also have backup valves in many cases where the actual local operator will go out and close a valve by hand as well. So yes, they have a very intricate system. It's a very solid system. I've actually had the opportunity to go tour one of those facilities myself, and it kind of looks like a NASA space center, almost control center, if you will, when you go into one of those things. So they do have a very good system in place.
Mm-hmm. So. Now let's talk specifics. We have this horrible failure in the Gulf of Mexico, which of course today is why so many folks are concerned about this Keystone Pipeline, which was coming through some sensitive area of Nebraska.
Yes.
So let's just back up for those who've been living in a cave for the last number of years. There was in 2010 and there are many platforms out in the Gulf of Mexico, correct? I
Yes.
mean, there's not just one or two. There's
Correct.
like, I don't know if it's hundreds or not, but there's a large number, and they have product coming up that they are then taking a pipe and sending it to the shore, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of these burst down there where the pipe met the ground, right?
Yes.
And then you had all this. Why was this product coming out of the ground? Is it just naturally in the ground under pressure?
Well, that's really not
Oh,
my
that's
area
beyond
of
your
expertise.
area.
It really
Okay.
is beyond my area of expertise,
Okay.
but
it was coming out,
It
and
certainly
they had
was.
a tough time stopping it.
They did.
So people are all disturbed about that.
Yes.
Because it did a lot of environmental damage.
yes.
And so now, what is the issue with the Keystone Pipeline? Are you familiar with what's the problem in Nebraska?
Living where I do, I am familiar enough to say this. The area where the pipeline originally was going to be run into the ground was a sensitive area as far as the environment goes and is concerned, or is certainly was concerned and still is. And so in part anyway, that project was not approved to be completed, was halted. And my last update on that, they're still working through that. But
They're looking for a new route around, and I don't know exactly what the sensitivity was here. But
I don't either. Typically, again, my area of expertise and where we work is typically for the lines that are already up and running and providing education, if you will, for stakeholder groups on behalf of them.
Then let's be specific. I mean, you're sitting here, you're in Metro East, Illinois, right near St. Louis. You've got a oil refining facility, 25 miles from the spot where we're sitting right now. You have been there to these facilities?
I have.
At Wood River, or your company has?
Yes, the company has. Typically, we will hold a meeting in the Wood River area specifically on behalf of several pipeline companies that have pipe that run through.
And what would
the
you talk
jurisdiction.
about with them?
We would actually sit down with emergency officials and talk about response. We would give them an overview of the pipeline systems as we've talked about. Integrity management, smart pigging, as we've talked about, and then the actual product, the type 1, 2, and 3 products, the liquid, the natural gas, and our type 3 product, which are HVLs, highly volatile liquids. And we will go through the product characteristics and hazards. If there is an incident where there's a release, obviously the products and characteristics of a petroleum, a liquid, a crude, the vapor from that is very heavy. It's going to stay low to the ground. As a responder, we want them to know that. We want the general public to know that. Certainly excavators that are out there, we want them to know that. So we provide specific information about each product. We also have the local pipeline operators who are at the meetings as well, and they will get up in these towards the end, sometimes during the middle of the programs, that actually talk to these stakeholder groups about the specific lines and the specific products that run through their areas and their jurisdictions where they serve. Public officials is another stakeholder group, Lee, that we also look to. Oftentimes they have the administrative or overall responsibility to include the purse strings, making sure that the emergency departments, fire departments, for instance, hazmat groups has the equipment. It allows them to have some face-to-face time. It also, very important, lets these responders know what resources the pipeline companies can bring to the table. If you had a liquid release into a waterway and your local volunteer fire department doesn't have booming equipment to go and respond, it's great to know before there's an incident at one of these meetings that the local pipeline company has a team with booming equipment that they can dispatch and respond to the areas. So
Booming equipment does what?
it actually stops the flow, if you will. You put it in the water, and it's a boom. You saw several of it in the BP where they had the tops of the nets and the buoys that were above ground, and it will actually stop the flow
Kind of
of that
corrals.
product. It does. It does.
Because it's floating on the surface.
That's exactly right, until they can get some kind of vacuum equipment in there to pick it up. And as you mentioned, once this thing starts happening and it starts flowing and running, it still takes time, even when the process to shut it down and being able to contain that. So knowing the resources, working a coordinated effort with the local emergency officials and the local pipeline company is a huge issue for what we do. It's a huge priority for us in what we do.
You said earlier 65% of our energy comes from things that flow through these pipelines?
Yes.
Right. So basically, as Americans, if we want to live the way that we live, we need these products, right?
We do. And certainly there's been discussion about alternative energy, and a lot of these pipeline companies has taken up that as well. But where we live and sit here today, oil and gas pipelines are a reality. There's a lot of them, and it's how we live.
Well, I mean, I've had people right there in that seat where you're sitting, battery company people. Yeah, it's 10 years away. We've had professors talking about solar energy. Oh, it's 10 years away. It's always 10 years away. And I'm concerned that there are people who are planning to throw away what we have that actually works right now for some future that doesn't exist yet.
Right, yeah. It certainly within the oil and gas pipeline industry right now, it is something that is here. I think it's here to stay for the foreseeable future. I feel very safe in saying that. And while all these other opportunities are great, and I'm anxious to see where it goes, we still daily have got to be responsible for the products that flow, in these pipeline systems. And I got to tell you, Lee, the pipeline companies, Missouri, the Pipeline Association of Missouri, is a group of operators that's come together that we actually provide and deliver their safety programs for them. Mm-hmm. They have really taken this up. Certainly they're driven by state and federal regulations to do so, which is another reason that we're out there. But getting in the face of their local people and getting the pipeline safety message out there, getting the damage prevention message to the excavators, it's a priority for them.
When you speak to the government stakeholders that you refer to, are they generally receptive, or are they like, we're dealing with stuff here that's just horrible, and it's going to destroy us?
No, it's, and I could see where some may think that, but Lee, it's really been an education for them. Overall, I would say it's the feedback that we've gotten is I just really didn't realize what we had to that capacity. And a lot of them are in charge or oversee their rural fire departments within the different districts within their counties. Mm-hmm. A lot of them oversee the road and bridge departments that actually go out and dig in the ground. And then a lot of them oversee, obviously, the purse strings for their cities, for their counties, for their budgets and equipment and that type of thing. So it does it does give the opportunity for the pipeline companies to kind of enter the picture and visit with these folks to maybe take a look and see what they do and or don't have and how they can work together. So it's been very positive overall for public officials.
In my reading, I found, and I didn't realize this, that different kinds of pipelines go in different places. By that, I mean that something that's carrying crude can go into a populated area or through a populated area, whereas stuff that is pushing natural gas, which of course is, if it were to rupture, would have much more devastating impact on the public, is actually kept away from the public as much as possible. Is that true?
A lot of your natural gas transmission pipeline are out in the rural areas, and this brings up a really important point here. A lot of your 80% of your volunteer fire departments of the fire departments, in the United States are volunteer.
Okay.
A lot of them are starved for training. Where a lot of these transmission pipeline actually sit, as you just mentioned, is out in the rural areas. So
right.
The importance for the pipeline companies and certainly us representing them to get out and get in front of these folks. They truly will be the first responder if an unfortunate pipeline incident occurs many times.
How often do we get, and I'm trying to think of the last time that I heard about a natural gas pipeline opening up and suddenly fire shooting out of it. Does this happen very often?
It does happen.
Very often or on occasion?
It's on occasion. I would say of the occasions it does happen, certainly within the towns and cities where we live, the local distribution pipelines, the smaller ones, because there's more of them in a smaller space and the third-party strikes. But certainly on occasion, a larger transmission pipeline will either have a third-party strike or we'll have a release. So it is on occasion, but there's no doubt, obviously, when it happens.
I was telling you before we went on the air about just within 2 miles of this spot a number of years ago, a smaller gas pipeline had been crimped somehow many years before, and it took decades, but finally it corroded through and gas started leaking out. Somebody alerted the gas company. They came, they tested, and the next thing you know, boom, I mean, everybody was showing up, and they tore this thing apart and put a new sleeve or a new piece of pipe in there. But I mean, the response was great, and it wasn't like they're, oh, well, let's not worry about it. It was very dramatic.
Yes.
And I experienced that firsthand.
Exactly, and while it's dramatic, obviously in the response to these things, you can, excitement picks up anxiety, anxiousness, and those type of things. So making sure pre-planning, again, with the stakeholder groups that we talk to and the local gas company or the pipeline operators, it's huge to have a game plan going in case, just in case. These pipelines are underground. They're out of sight, they're out of mind. We don't think about them. We drive by pipeline warning markers every day and never think about it. But they are out there. So having that coordinated effort and having a game plan helps those emergency situations go a little bit smoother, I think.
Apparently we're running out of time here. Is there any last minute thoughts that you would like the public to hear?
Your pipeline companies are working very hard to keep safety at the forefront. We represent them in the company that I work for, again, delivering programs throughout the United States.
That company is?
Paradigm Liaison Services. We're out of Wichita, Kansas. We also purchased another company, Solaritus, out of Kansas City, working well together with them and slated to do over 900 programs this year, Lee, for pipeline safety. So if you see a program in your area, please come and be a part of it.
For the now, is the public invited to come to that?
Yes, we actually have. No one is.
Or are you talking about like government officials, firemen, et cetera?
Well, typically the emergency officials, the excavators, contractors, which I look at as part of the public, certainly, and local public officials, but anyone that sees a pipeline training, safety training program in their area, we never turn anyone away. It's just it's very important. Certainly the pipeline companies need these type of programs. It's part of their regulatory requirements.
Do you notify the local news people that you're coming so that they can at least put that out?
Yes, we do have media contacts. We have certainly databases and data sources where we keep everyone, and we send out invitations in the mail. We do email, we do faxes, we do phone calls to try to gain the support and get attendance at these meetings. So yes, we do, and in certain areas of the country, we do get a lot of response. So.
Thanks for being with us, Steve Roberts. I appreciate your coming in and talking to us. You came a long way to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
To my audience, I've been speaking with Steve Roberts. He came all the way from Wichita, Kansas to be with us here in Metro East, St. Louis area. And I've learned a lot here today, even though I've done a lot of research. Hope you did too. To the audience, we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.